idea for all this really came from a dream?
Yes, it did.
Good evening and welcome to Nox Mente, our 100th episode. Yay! Tonight's guest is Sam Shadow. Sam is an experimental modern-day occultist. He's 28 years old and lives in Jacksonville, Florida. His interests began with Thelema and Theistic Satanism. Later, he expanded into new directions such as Radionics, Esoteric Voodo, Setian magic, Typhonian magic, and Demonology. Sam is also an independent musician and paints portraits of various deities. Sam, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here.
I have been looking forward to this, Sam, and everyone in our combined circles, everyone knows who you are. So for the people out there, get into it that don't know who Sam is. Get into it. Sam is a wealth of knowledge. It's amazing at such a young age. And as I always say, if anyone follows me on Twitter and sees how I treat Sam in public, you will all know how beautiful I think Sam is. If you have not seen him in Trans Delight, you are missing out. Unbelievable androgynous soul. You're just an unbelievable androgynous soul, and that's the highest form of magic, Sam. Welcome.
For me, that's the highest form of a compliment. So thank you. Wow, I think at this point I might need an extra layer of foundation because I'm turning red. Like,
it's a good thing we focus on the words here. All right, let's just jump into this and let's start off running. And may Mercury bless us. And I'm so thrilled. I just want to say this too. I'm thrilled you're a Halloween baby.
Thank you. No, I love Halloween.
Yeah, it was, I mean, the timing's unbelievable. So, all right, tell us about young Sam, the earliest stuff you can recall. And, you know, I'm always looking for the stuff that really sticks out. So this can be the bad stuff too, but pop culture, stuff that was influencing as far back as you can recall. And tying this in, did you have a relationship with nature? It's a big question there.
Okay. Well, I'll try and keep my description still relative to our show. And it's funny you mentioned that because I almost covertly wish I could secretly audio record a conversation with my mother about this. Because when I was a little kid, like a really little kid, 3, 4, 5 years old, I wasn't into most things that average little kids were into. I loved snakes and spiders and skeletons. And like, I don't know, for me, it didn't even register that Halloween was just like sort of a once a year holiday for fun. I just saw a lot of these things and, I loved those things year round. For whatever reason, I was drawn to it. And another weird little thing, I was such a strange kid, that I loved at that age was squids and octopuses. And I feel like my mother would completely, say all these things are true. She knows what a weird little kid I was. But I look back at that.
So octopi.
Octopi. There we go. Sorry for my poor English. But I look over 20 years into the future, and I think of myself, as an occultist, and I think of working with the Gede and Voodoo with Baron Samedi, and I think of H.P. Lovecraft and Cthulhu, and I think of Set Typhon and the Typhonian current of magic, and I think to myself, wow, it's no wonder that, being drawn to these archetypes as such a little kid might have had some kind of deep influence on me as an adult. And I think I was always drawn to nature. I live in Florida. I live in North Florida, right on the outskirts of Jacksonville. And I'm right outside of the Duval city limit, so I'm kind of in the woods. I'm just far enough from the city to where I'm not really, in a metropolitan area. I'm still kind of in the sticks. And, growing up, I mean, really, I didn't have a lot of friends, and all I'm surrounded by is green trees, green trees, green trees. So having an active imagination and being in this environment, I obviously spent a lot of time in the forest. And, today as an adult, that's it's still something I love to do, both for magical and mundane reasons. I love kayaking, I love hiking, I love swimming, but I also, I bury a lot of ritual work and a lot of sigils in the forest, and sometimes I'll use different elements within nature as a place to evoke a spirit or commune with a spirit, perhaps.
Oops, I was mic'd. I was muted. So with stuff like, say, movies and that kind of stuff. So already we know, and it was no surprise with the genres. Did anything in particular actually scare the hell out of you
When I was a little kid, or just like in
Wh-
general?
when you were little?
When I was little, what scared the hell out of me when I was little? You know what? I think the only thing that oddly enough really scared me when I was little, like, was Chucky. And I don't know why he scared me so bad, but I remember, just I wasn't afraid of any of the rest of that stuff. Even things that were way worse, like Hellraiser, didn't bother me. But for whatever reason, Chucky really bothered me. And I remember like being about 10 or 11 years old, and they were going to have the Child's Play marathon on AMC. And I thought, you know what? Fuck it, I'm going to face my fear and watch these movies. And I watched them, and they were hilarious. They were so funny. Like he's as funny as Freddy Krueger with his little one-liners and stuff. So yeah, but he was really the only one that really scared me when I was a kid. Was Chucky.
Interesting. And it's he's such a I'm a collector of antique dolls, and I like them early wax dolls and all this. And I just have always found him appalling.
Sam, have you ever seen the original trilogy of terror with Karen Black?
Oh yeah,
Ooh,
with the
That was
that's
our
goody.
Chucky when we were
that was a
kids.
freaky little doll too. That
Yeah.
teeth doll
Yeah.
with the sharp.
Yeah.
teeth. Yeah.
Yes. Now that was scary,
Yeah.
and it was what is so great about the great Karen Black too is that mix of androgynous beauty with the terror with her. I always loved her so much.
Oh, she's beautiful. It's a shame she passed away a few years ago. I saw her in those movies like The Devil's Rejects, and I didn't realize that when she was in that, she was probably pushing 80 or late 70s. And I thought, oh my God, I hope when I'm her age, I'm that beautiful, because wow.
She is beautiful all along, but she had an exotic beauty to her. She was
Yeah.
not common looking at all. So, okay, so back here early days, were there things that stick out that we hear more typical with kids being afraid of the dark or something under the bed, those kinds of night terror-y situations?
I nothing like that ever really happened to me, but I did have one weird experience at a friend's house when I was in the third grade that, like, this was probably the first paranormal type of experience I ever had in my life. And it's a story I really don't tell people, but because we're on this subject, I'll tell you guys. So I was in the third grade, and I was staying the night at my friend's house, and he kind of lived way out in the woods, and his dad was already kind of messing with me. He's like, oh, well, there's a wolf out there, and he's going to get you. He's going to get you. And I thought, okay, whatever, he's messing with me. And, it's a normal sleepover, and I went to bed, and I woke up one night. I went to use the bathroom, and I'm in the bathroom, and I look in the mirror, and in the reflection behind me, I see this little boy that kind of looks like Damien out of The Omen, for lack of a better, explanation. And I see it, in the reflection behind me. I turn around, there's nothing there. I think that's, it's my imagination. I turn back around, and within a matter of seconds, I see his reflection again. He's holding a baseball bat bent back like this, and he whacks me over the head, and I fall down, and I black out, and I wake up, and I don't know if it's been like 5 minutes or an hour or whatever. I remember sitting up and touching the back of my head and feeling a knot, and then running out of that bathroom screaming at the top of my lungs. And my friend's mom took me home, and she thought I was just like I had a nightmare or whatever. Nobody was buying my story because the dad had been fucking with me all night and stuff. And she brought me home, and I went and I woke up my parents. I told them exactly what happened to me, and they were laughing. They were like, oh, that's just a dream. That's not real. And I took my mom's hand, and I put it on the back of my head where I had that knot, and my parents just kind of paused and looked at each other, and they never said anything else about it. They just said it was a dream, it wasn't real, go back to sleep. And it was never talked about again.
Cue the Rosemary's Babies music. This is not a dream. This is really happening.
Exactly.
Did you, along the line, have you come to any conclusions with that experience?
I think that there was some kind of spirit in his house that obviously preyed on things that were weaker than it was. I think it obviously liked children, and that's why it took the form of a child. It could have been anything. Maybe it was the spirit of somebody who died. Maybe it was some sort of lower level demonic being, perhaps.
It was a demon.
I don't know what it was.
My vote's demon. Everything is demons.
I like demons too, so I'll vote for that. It probably was a demon.
Demons for president. So what about this? So in this early period, your relationship with dreams and dreaming.
Oh, wow. I did have, I can't really recall any dreams from when I was a kid, though, but I do remember having a lot of active dreams, being a very active dreamer. Some of the most early dreams that I can recall probably are either my late teenage years or early adult years. And I think those were the ones where they really, really started to make an impact on my life from then on out.
And so you do recall at least having dreams, and they were present in your life, though, early on.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's weird. Like the ones I remember from when I was a kid aren't scary or even that deep at all. Like a lot of the dreams I remember having are kind of funny now. I remember having this one weird dream where I was being chased by a T-Rex through the woods, and it was going meow 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 meow. I'm not going to
commercial. The commercial, yeah.
Won't get us a copyright strike, but it's just
hilarious. Sam, you muted yourself.
I'm sorry. Give me one. Okay, I'm sorry about that. I was having a computer problem.
Oh, I thought it was an accident. Anyway, so the T-Rex one's fun though. It's clearly, obviously partly from that, mixed commercial, and then the dinosaur, which is interesting. But there we are. There's an early one.
Yeah, I don't have much of a memory of really early dreams. Like I really don't. God, I'm trying so hard to remember anything, like any dream period from childhood, and I just can't do it. Like a lot of
it's all right. It's all right. They come. I just want to get that. We're just building the foundation here.
Yeah.
So what about religion in your household as you were very young and growing up?
Well, I was raised in a Catholic household. Yeah, we went to church. I mean, I went to Sunday school when I was a kid. I think by the time I was like 12 or 13 years old, like I had really been fed up with the indoctrination of a Hebrew slave god. And started to rebel against that ideology a little bit. But
how old were you when that started in?
Like 12, 13.
You probably said that, but
at that point, I think I was like it's not like I went into occultism or anything at that point. That wasn't until I was almost 23 years old. Then I think I was just a very angry kid, and I realized what I was being told was a lie. And because of my limited perception at the world at the time, I just figured, since you're pushing this down my throat and this is a lie, then all religion must be a lie. And of course, when I got older, I realized that wasn't true. But yeah, I'm definitely not a Christian. I'm definitely not Catholic.
Yeah, but it's, 12 or 13 is a classic time to question reality. It's pretty common. I love that. I love how auspicious it was that, that you were 23 when you started to push into the occult, though. That
is really unique, isn't it?
Not, but it really isn't, but it is perfect. It's absolutely perfectly synced. So, all right, back to just building this foundation. In So in puberty, I can't recall if you said earlier, but that it was a little bit later you start remembering your dreams. Do you think that was in the puberty range?
No, I'd already hit puberty before that. Like, I think by the time I was like 12 or 13, I was already like, you know, maturing. I had a libido, hair was growing in funny places, that kind of thing. So,
Oh my.
no, I was a little bit older than that. I was probably like a lot of the ones that I tried to recall, that really started to make impacts, were probably around the age of maybe 17 or 18, or even
Okay.
18, 19. Uh, I don't know if it had to do with my age or not. I'm not sure. I don't know why it came at that period of my life. I didn't even practice magic at the time, but looking back, I had a lot of, I guess you could say magical dream experiences that started there before I ever even began practicing.
Do you have any of those examples for us?
Oh, of course. I've had, oh God. Well, I don't even know where to begin. Do you want to hear about some of my UFO dreams?
Yeah, take us where you want. I want, of course, I want a lot of good dream content. And then the meat of this whole podcast is about consciousness in the end. So we're going to chew the
Ooh,
fodder.
excellent. I can't wait to see you pick my brain. It's going to be interesting.
I'm already in there, baby.
Ooh. It's a good thing anybody can't see me turning red as a cherry right now.
Sam and I have a rapport, so if
We
it
do.
shows.
I love
I'm
me.
grabbing screenshots, so don't worry. I'll post them in the show notes.
I love my Sam so much. All right,
Aw.
so take us down with some of these amazing dreams that you have.
Well, one that really stuck out to me when I was probably 18 or 19 was, okay, I remember so every year where I live, there's a Christmas parade that goes down Main Street, and it's actually within walking distance of my house. And I remember in this dream, it was like wintertime, and it's a hyper realistic dream. I'm standing with my mom and my dad, and we're watching this Christmas parade, and about 60 to 90 yards away, near where the courthouse is, in the middle of this parade, all of a sudden this flying saucer comes out and it just stops and is sort of levitating in midair. And the whole parade stops and everybody's looking at, like, what the hell is this? And this purple beam goes directly down from the saucer. It hits the ground and expands outward. And when it's expanding, everybody starts running away and screaming. And I remember looking down at my hand, because I've heard if you ever think you're having a dream, look at your hands. And that's a trick. But I remember looking down at my hand as this energy is like just sort of blowing past my whole body, and my hand starts disintegrating almost like sand in the wind. It's just blowing away into billions of little particles. And that scared the shit out of me. I woke up and I've never really had dreams about aliens per se, but I've had unless you count the great old ones, but I've I've had a lot of dreams about just UFOs, things like that. Um, I won't go, I guess, into any of those other ones because they were when I was much older. But when I was 18, 19, I also had a lot of dreams about. I've never had a dream about Cthulhu or Yog Sothoth or any specific Lovecraftian deity.
Yet.
But I had yet. Oh wait, maybe I have, but I'll get to that. It was when I was older. I'll get to that later. I did have a lot of dreams about things, I guess you could say, are definitely in that realm of experience. I had this one dream, just really lots of dreams in general in that age, and I didn't even practice magic. I did like H.P. Lovecraft, but dreams about the ocean and these really weird looking prehistoric fish like anglerfish and goblin sharks and like sort of like the long necked dinosaurs you'll see in movies and stuff, like with sharp teeth, except they were, they looked different in the dream. They were more like pink and black. And, but something I think that really hits on a deeper, primal, almost alien archetypal level. One that really stood out that was really Lovecraftian was I had a dream that I was in a hotel by the beach, and I'm several stories up in the air, and it's raining. It's storming, like a tropical storm came through, and I'm staring out at the beach from my hotel window, and there's a lighthouse and the ocean, the tide's really crazy, and I see this big shark swimming through the ocean. I can kind of see his silhouette and the shape of him, like a big great white. And all of a sudden, I see this yellow tentacle come out, and it grabs the shark and wraps around him. And this thing comes out and wraps around the lighthouse, holding the shark, and it's like this yellow. It's hard to explain because it was almost like seeing something on LSD. It's constantly shifting and changing. It never really stayed the same, but it's like eyes and tentacles and just teeth, and it was yellow, and it never really stayed consistent. It constantly shifted in appearance, and it's eating this shark latched onto the lighthouse, and I'm bearing witness to this whole Lovecraftian horror from my hotel window. Okay, so this is interesting. Fast forward to last year in 2018, I found out. Okay, so around the time of my 27th birthday, I had this dream where I didn't see Yog Sothoth in the dream, but I remember having some kind of dream about him. And in real life, I was saying as I slept, Yog Sothoth, Yog Sothoth, Yog Sothoth, Yog Sothoth. And the sound of my own voice is what woke me up. Like I heard myself saying that, and it scared me, and I woke up. And come to find out, there's a pylon from the Temple of Set that was doing a ritual for Yog Sothoth, oddly enough, whether you want to say it's connected or completely unconnected, on June 18th that year, 2018, which is my birthday. And I thought that was very fascinating.
That's completely significant. And anyone that's listening, and a lot of the people that do listen, follow these kinds of synchronicities and numbers. And I find this really remarkable with the synchronicity of your birthday, the timing of it. Uh, it's it's remarkable. Of course, I have a lot to say, but I never do really. Uh,
Well, voice it.
I
I'd love to hear it.
Well, I can go into that with you
Okay.
privately, but it's fantastic, and I really appreciate the timing of all that, and it adds to this layer that there's more going on here, right? This
Absolutely.
The surface is just so shallow. The surface in which we call life. So in this 18 and 19, from 17 to 19 period, and when the occult's starting to court you via the dream realm, right? Through these images and this ocean stuff, I perennially ask about ocean stuff. You just gave me fantastic material. Some people have none, by the way. So you never know. So that's extra juicy. And what I wanted to ask in line with that, is there anything you remember? Because I can't remember right now when you were at like 18, I think you said when you were having that, what was going on politically. But was there anything interesting going on in the outer world when you had that dream?
I think that was an interesting time in my life because I look back at that and I think for that very young age, I put way too much responsibility at myself at that time. What I mean by that is, I had just graduated high school, I had just turned 18, and I had a job and I was going to college. And in my head, like I was an adult, and I was in a very negative relationship at the time with somebody who had a kid with somebody else. And I was trying to almost be a stepfather to this kid that's not even mine. And this person is constantly lying to me, abusing me, cheating on me. And I think that in retrospect, I put all of this pressure on myself, thinking, "Oh, I'm an adult. I can do this, that, blah blah blah." But really, I was so young and so green behind the ears and ill prepared for the world. And I wonder if that has anything to do subconsciously with why I had so much unrest, so much emotional turbulence. It was a very negative period of my life where I thought I was trying to do the right thing. And I look back and I realize, wow, if I was smarter, I would have just probably been doing what I'm doing now, which is just living my life for me and doing whatever I want, whenever I want, and staying true to myself.
Yeah, but I mean, this is how we get to that perspective through these lessons, as you know, and especially as you know, as sorry, I had to hit a dog. It was not really hit,
Oh,
but it was she's digging on an antique. So it's these kinds of experiences that do bring us the insight we need. And it's charming that you at that age were ready to step up and play stepdad.
yeah.
You're
Can
like
you imagine?
18. It's so cute.
Uh, I was more responsible at 18 than some 30-year-olds I've met.
Yeah. Well, it says everything about your character, and it's one of these reasons why you're so wonderful, is because this is that kind of character in which you put forward and seem to possess.
Thank you.
So in the I think at this period, let's just get the landscape, the way you deal with the dream architecture out of the way. How do you experience dreams? And so I'm looking for all that tactile stuff. Are you able to read script? Is it color? Is, smell? How is the dreamscape for you?
I would say all of the above, but different ones usually have more one or the other pertaining to it, sort of, if that makes sense. And that's weird you mentioned that because I've heard a lot of people can't read things in dreams, but I always have been able to, and I don't know why. Uh, okay, so I had one dream earlier this year uh, where, oh man, I can think of two where I read things. I'll give you the shorter one first, and if you want, I can go into a much deeper one.
Give us the one you find juiciest. We have time, Sam.
I'll give the shorter one first, then the juicier one. So the shorter one, it was almost like it was the 1800s, and I was in this old sort of seaside town with a lot of wooden buildings and docks and stuff. And I'm in this boarding school, and the school lets out, and I walk out of the schoolhouse, and it's all gray and raining. And across from the schoolhouse is this old bookstore, and I go in, and I'm looking around. And I notice they have a lot of occult books in this one specific section upstairs. And I go upstairs, and I'm looking, and I see this big black book about the size of a phone book with gold lettering on the side, and it says Paimonius. And I'm thinking of King Paimon immediately.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes.
I'm thinking that there is something in this book that some type of knowledge of King Paimon that he's either saying, I didn't read the book in that dream, but he's either saying, come embrace this knowledge or come open this knowledge, or I have something for you. I have something you need to learn. But I took that as an omen in my own magical practice because I'm very fond of King Paimon.
When
Oops, sorry.
So let's pause here for a second. You said this one was more recent?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. This was earlier this year.
Were you already wearing the sigil of Paimon? Because I know you have it on a lot.
Oh, not yet. I had actually just got that about 2-3 months ago, but yeah, I hadn't gotten it yet. But I knew who he was, and I liked him, and knew
Okay.
a lot about him.
So it was almost like a courting in a weird way. Like, this is we're gonna communicate here. I mean, the symbol, the book
Right.
is so classic. All right, give us the new one. That one is these dreams are great, Sam thing.
Here's another one I had about last summer that oh man, I can't go into all the details without, completely making my life transparent, but this the reason I'm mentioning it is because we talked about being able to read in dreams, and this one really stood out to me. So I had this dream that I was in high school, and I'm in this teacher's class, and he wasn't even a teacher I had in real life, but I'm in this teacher's class, and I guess they're having a book fair, and all it was like a little bookshelf with these books you could buy at the front of the class. I'm looking through them, and I see this book called The Gospel of Set, and it has a picture of Set on the cover, and I open it up, and it says $10. And I said, you know what, I want this. And I paid the man $10, and I'm taking it back to my desk, and I'm reading it. And I remember opening a page, and I couldn't read the whole thing because I remember being able to read the words, but not all of them would make sense in a sentence structure. But one little part stood out to me, and it was the name Shugal Karanzan, which is a name that Kenneth Grant uses for Karanzan in some of his books, and which I found to be very interesting because Karanzan 333 and Set obviously being, a very Saturnian kind of figure. I thought there was a little bit of a connection there.
Have you seen any of the Thomas Sheridan stuff on C333?
No, I haven't.
He thinks it is possessing the internet, for lack of a better term.
Ooh. Let's open up that portal to Doth.
Oh, I think it's open.
And that's a rabbit hole for you to go down. It's juicy. Anyway, not to sidetrack you, sorry.
Oh, no, it's fine, but it gets even more intense. So that's the tame part of it. So I get this book and I open it up and I'm trying to read it, right? I'm trying to make sense. And I'm in a classroom, high school setting, right? And this African-American boy, probably about 17 years old, comes in, and he's wearing full drag, and he's also wearing other fetish-related items completely unrelated to drag, and is behaving in various mannerisms that I recognize within myself. And he walks up to me, and he's like looking at my book, and he's like, "Oh, well, what's this? What's this?" I said, "Oh, this is a book I just bought, blah, blah, blah." I didn't really pay much attention to him at the time. I'm trying to ignore him and, read my book. And he says, "Oh, well, what's that?" to like distract me. And I turn my head and he reaches into my book and rips a big page out of my book. And I got mad. I'm like, I just paid for this book. Give me my pages out of my fucking book back, right? And I turn around to look at the book. And another kid, a white kid with glasses, has a pair of scissors. And he's cutting up the remaining pages of the book and rearranging them into something else. And at that point, I kind of lost my temper. I wasn't thinking. And I threw my hands in the air. I said, "Fine, you want my fucking book? You can have it." And I stormed out of the classroom. And, I woke up shortly after that. But it was after I woke up that I looked back in retrospect and realized like how shook I was by that dream. Because Set being isolate self-consciousness, Set being the self, I realized that this young African-American boy was actually, perhaps you could say, my shadow self, or he was a very deep aspect of my own psyche that perhaps I have repressed or ignored because society has judged me or tried to make me feel ashamed for acting or behaving a certain way. And that was sort of a wake-up call to say, you know what, maybe I should just say fuck everybody and be who I am, embrace that which I am, because that's really the ultimate key to happiness, and that is the gift of Set or the gift of Satan. And the white boy with the glasses, that was very fascinating because this was right at a time that with Davey and Baz and Saroth, we were exploring a lot of the works of William S. Burroughs and Brian Geisen. And I got the impression that this young man was doing something with the cut-up method to rearrange reality, that he was doing something to alter either the course of my reality or reality in general, perhaps. But after I woke up, I had this obsession with this astral book, The Gospel of Set. I even Googled it and I couldn't find, obviously it wasn't a real book. And I kept thinking, what is it Set is trying to tell me in this dream? Can I tap back into it? And I even made an offering. I made a Setian dollar, kind of like hell money, except it was money for Set. And I consecrated it, and I kept it under my pillow for about a month before I burned it. But I never really was able to tap back into that gnosis to where I got at that point. But I did learn something from that dream, and I think I gained a little bit of introspect that was deeply needed.
Yeah, I love your this is why chatting with you is such a treat. As I said earlier when we came on, your depth of knowledge is breathtaking for your age especially. And
Thank you. I
this
appreciate that.
well, it's clear you've done the work and you do the work, you continue to do the work, and so it shows and it shines. And one of the things with this self-analysis of this particular dream that is fascinating too is, and I had written it down here, was the cut up aspect. And we both understand magically where that is rooted and how that can play out and how rewarding it is in the end. And I couldn't help but think perhaps, although you did do it with like a hell note situation to set,
Right.
correct? Uh, that the image I got was this is a different level of communication, clearly, and it's going to and cut up nature, and then we're talking in the dreamscape, which is just our state of lucidness if we're really awake there. uh, that there is an aspect of finding a new, different way to communicate with him or with it, however you want to
Oh,
view
for
that.
sure.
So that came through pretty clear, and it's as an observer. I don't really do dream interpretations on air like this, but I think there's something more to explore within that particular avenue of getting a clear channel of communication, because you were you were touched with the shining there.
I think so. I think well, Set's been a deity that's been very dear to me since I first started practicing magic at all. And to really, have that type of gnosis with him, I think that's really what the Setian experience or the satanic experience is really all about. I think that, and I don't want to get too far off subject because I want to keep it in the realm of dreams, but, even in waking life, I think what I gained from that gnosis is just a deeper introspect of me, perhaps. And I mean, sometimes it boosts my confidence. Like, I think, hell yeah, I'm the shit. It makes me super self aware of all my strengths. But at the flip side of that, it also makes me hyper aware of all my flaws and the things I need to improve on and those kinds of things as well.
Yeah. Oh, it's always the razor's edge. We're
Oh, for
always
sure.
on that. And we meander here in the show, Sam. So meanders are welcome. The whole thing, everything in the end is about states of consciousness, whether people want to see that or not. All of it. This, your waking life, your daydreams, your memories, the thing and experience you call dreaming. This is all consciousness, and it's all in the realm of Nox Mente if we're open.
That's I love the way you worded that. I'm sure you guys have heard this before, but I mean, a lot of shamanistic cultures like the Native Americans and the Chinese, various others. I mean, to them, a dream was equally as valid as waking reality. They just saw that as reality or an alternate reality, perhaps. There's a Carlos
Yes.
Castaneda reference for you.
Oh yeah, and what a genius he was. So let's get back into this. Give us some more, because I know you spent some time and dug up a lot of dream images for us. So bring us more, and I'm very much into hearing about this magical side since we have you on the seat here. So you are able to read in dreams. Not everyone is, as was stated earlier, and it's a wonderful thing. Do you come into the experience of dreaming with any like smell, touch, these kinds of things?
Sometimes, and sometimes even other sensations too. I have had dreams where I can't think of any one specific thing, but things like maybe a dream where I'm in a beautiful mountain range and I can smell the pine trees, I can smell the soil and the clean air. I can almost feel that. Or even dreams where maybe something crazy happens, I get shot with a gun or something, and I can feel that.
Hmm.
Uh, I had this was another dream I had. If you're talking about just occult, otherworldly sensations, like almost sort of a an empath sort of feeling, if you will. I had a dream earlier this year that I went to hell, and it wasn't scary, but this is why I mentioned it now. I had this dream I went to hell, and it was almost like a blacklight poster. Everything was orange and yellow, like a bright neon orange and yellow. And it was kind of stereotypical, what you would imagine, like fire and rocks and shit. But when I had this dream that felt very short lived, I felt this strong physical sensation when I woke up on the top of my head that felt like an electric shock. It felt like it felt like I grabbed hold of an electric fence or something, but it was only on top of my head, and I felt my jaws clench up too, like, and that's when I woke up. But I thought, oh wow, I've had that kind of sensation doing an evocation before. I wonder what that was about.
That's fascinating. And that as you know, and other people that understand this language too, the whole crown chakra area up there by the pineal gland, all this whole area is so significant in the process of decoding what this soup we're in. And so that's 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 fascinating. And I love that it was the hell imagery.
I don't know why I had that specific dream. There were no demons in the dream. There was no entities in the dream. It was just the setting, you know?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's such a facade.
For
It's so
sure. Yeah,
like,
and it wasn't scary. It didn't feel scary when I was there. I was like, yeah, this feels a little stereotypical to be hell, but
right? Get Party City. Where's Party City? Uh,
exactly.
that's hilarious. So, so back here in the dreamscape, are there structures or places or things that you return to? So not necessarily reoccurring dreams, but actual apparati or architecture within the dream that's familiar. It does
Oh, yeah.
shift, but
Yeah, for sure. And it's interesting you mentioned that because I referenced Burroughs briefly earlier. And if you've ever read Burroughs, he talks a lot about inner zone kind of being the place that he would go to in his dreams, which you could say maybe inner zone is just his word or his definition for the dream world or a separate reality, maybe even whether Carlos Castaneda called it the left hand reality, or Kenneth Grant would call it the Meon, or the Klipoth, perhaps. For me personally, there is a place like that I kind of go, which has two unique looks to it. It's always either a forest, like in a countryside with country houses spread out through a forest, and it's always nighttime, whether it's this setting or the other. The other one is almost like it kind of looks like the west coast of the United States, but mixed with the forest as well. So it's kind of like Northern California mixed with a good balance of forest, which I guess that is now Northern California. It's got a good bit of woods, but anyway, it's either one of those two appearances, and it's always nighttime, and sometimes it's raining. And I always recognize this place when I go to it, and there hasn't ever been one reoccurring location, perhaps, or one reoccurring person in these areas that I go. But I have had just a weird experience there where I feel like I contact a lot of dead things. Like I remember one dream I had. I was in this countryside type of area in Inner Zone, And I went into this old house where there was a basement. That should be a red flag there because there's no basements in Florida. We're beneath sea level. But I went in this basement and I found this skeleton. And I remember he was kind of buried, like halfway buried, halfway unearthed. And just getting the overwhelming sensation, like who lived in this house, what happened in this house, who is still quote unquote living, if you will, in this house. I remember another dream, oddly enough, where I met Burroughs in a very similar looking house. I went in this one really, basically the same as what I just described, countryside, old wooden houses, nighttime. I went in here and these old people like were having a tea party. Lots of well-dressed men and women with suits and dresses and curly mustaches and umbrellas and shit. And they're having their tea party. And it's like when I got there, they knew I came to speak to somebody, but even I didn't really know who I was coming to speak to. And they were like, "Oh, we'll just go in the other room there and walk in and he's waiting on you." I said, "Okay." And I open this door and I go in and it's just a room with nothing but like a really old 90s computer on it and a table, like an old 90s monitor. And I go up and I sit down on it and it's kind of like flashing and glitching. And it was William S. Burroughs on the monitor. And I start talking to William S. Burroughs. And I can't remember the whole conversation that was said. And I asked him one specific thing that stuck out to me. I said, "What are you writing now?" And he said, "I'm writing a poem and it's called Broken Pencils." And that was the last thing I remember. And then I woke up. But yeah, I guess like as far as a reoccurring setting or a place that I sometimes go, like, yeah, that's definitely one of them. That's
Broken pencils. Now, this is a pearl of wisdom from Burroughs.
it is.
What a great, two words put together.
Whenever he talks about language as a virus or smashing up the control images, rearranging reality, I could see where he would write something titled Broken Pencils.
Oh,
I
yeah.
almost wanted to try and write my own poem called Broken Pencils just to see, if he could be alive here with us today, what would he, if he was gifted, maybe I should do it as an automatic writing, who knows?
That's exactly what I was just thinking. I would take that and run, Sam. I would. It should be, evoke him into his space, into your space, but as not in no formal way, just into your space as an inspiration, as a muse, right, in that sense. And see what happens and follow through with that. I think it is going to be quite delicious.
Ooh, it's a fruitful endeavor for sure. It's something to definitely pursue.
And then think about it, since Broken Pencils also is for a writer that's passed.
Oh, wow.
Right?
That puts a whole new spin on it. I never even thought about it that way. Oh my
Yeah.
God.
So there's that angle. And again, see, this is why this is so fun with you. Because I'm wanting to
Thank you.
flesh out some of these things. I usually do not do this. Okay, so and then back to just the basics with dreaming. Let's look at how you experience well, okay, before I get to this, do you fly?
Oh, you know what? I did have one dream, and it's probably my only really lucid dream where I flew, and basically what happened was in the dream I woke up and I didn't even realize it was a dream. I remember being in my house, everything seemed normal, and I was completely conscious and had complete control over my actions. And I remember realizing there's nobody else in my house, and that's when it occurred to me, this is a dream. Maybe I can have some kind of control over this. And I did. I went into my yard and I said, "I'm going to fly to Jacksonville." And this was the coolest part about it. I shit you not. When I flew to Jacksonville, I remember actually standing in my yard and pushing up, like pushing on some type of weight. And the harder I would push, I would lift more off the ground and eventually got to where I'm flying. And when I looked down, it felt like every road and every building was exactly where it would have been in real life. Like everything was perfectly located. Nothing was different or abstracted. It was like looking at it from a satellite on Google Images or something. And I remember flying, and this was kind of the funny part. I had all this control over the dream, right? But I got too caught up on the scenery. And all of a sudden, I start to lose control of the dream, and I start falling. And I fall, and I hit the road, and I roll like this. And I remember getting up, and after that, it just kind of became a regular dream. I didn't really have control.
This sounds like being in the old school terminology, astral projection, out of body, really, and where things line up with the way you recognize them in waking life, where there's, the dreamscape in and of itself before high lucidity happens can be very mutable, and a lot of different things can shift it around. And I find that the outer world stuff, when we're OBE or at astral projecting, I'm trying to get past these old Victorian terms, because it's just states of lucidity for me at this point, including where we are right now. But that is a cue to me that this was a deeper level, or it was a more awakened state, let's put it that way, because it all lined up with your waking assumption of spatial orientation.
It was perfect. I mean, and really ever since that dream niche, I've never had another one like it. I've had very realistic dreams, even dreams where I felt things and, smelled and touched things, but I've never had another one like that where I was completely in control and everything looked exactly as how it would have in real life.
When was this, by the way?
Oh, wow. This was probably maybe, I'd say about 5 years ago.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, that's a good one. And that kind of addressed my next basics question, which was about the states of lucidity and getting fully out of body, is like, say, which we could look at as being awake within the dream, right? But on an esoteric level, you already understand where that goes. A lot of times I have to kind of explain that, without explaining it. So a fully awakened dream where, what's the highest lucidity? This was high lucidity right there that you just described. Was that it?
Probably, yeah. As far as lucidity goes, I would say that's probably the highest point, or the most realistic point I probably ever achieved through a dream.
Did you, so with dream mechanics here again, what about there's the different states, the liminal states and all this, the hypnagogic, all this. What about these in between states where we're kind of tipping in and out of our flesh suits, where you might be feeling like you're stretching out beyond it or going smaller or kind of spinning. The spinning when you're drunk, the spins, that is, I mean, people take that for granted. People that get really drunk, but that's a very significant experience. And if you can push into it, there's a lot of magic to be had there. If you can not throw up.
I've heard that too about like certain shamans that they would use alcohol for
Oh
a
yeah, yes.
awareness, or just an altered state of awareness.
Well, one of the things that gets your cognitive mind to realize that you're not fully your body is when you're moving in and out of it. And the spins are an example of that, where your body's not spinning, but you are spinning.
It's kind of like the whirling dervishes.
Yes. And so that's just like a pragmatic view of it. The problem is the drunken state. People get too tied up and we get caught up in in the sickness that's actually going on with the flesh that got us into that state. And so there's this attachment aspect, and with all magic, attachment's such a big deal. We have to let it go for it to work even. Uh so with this stuff being said, I'm curious. So you've said a lot of provocative stuff that I want to explore, but I'm also looking for the fact that you did bring us so many dreams, and I want to get into more dreams, but I want to just make sure we have a little time to with these specific dreams, because it's Samhain, it's Hallows Eve, it's this period, and you mentioned this earlier, dead in the dream, the dead in dream.
Oh, yes.
So I know you have some fantastic content for us, or you wouldn't have said that.
Thank you. Yeah, I've only had a few dreams, I guess, that could be really linked with the dead. You know what? I'll share one. I shared this on John Rasmus's podcast earlier this year, but it's one I don't really talk about that much because it is like a deeply well, okay, and I guess this relates going back to what you said a minute ago about lucid dreams. Maybe this was the most lucid dream. I take that back about the flying dream. Maybe this was the most lucid dream. I just didn't really think of it as a lucid dream at the time. But
Well, really, the one you're having right now is.
Our waking reality, yeah, like in a Gnostic sense, I guess.
This is the most lucid dream. Anyway,
Okay, so sometimes it's really hard for me to wake up in the morning. So what I'll do is I'll go turn on my light, and then sometimes I'll lay back down and even fall asleep again for another hour or two, because eventually I know that light is going to force me to get up. And as you know, my dad died about 1 year ago last year, and I had this dream towards the beginning of this year that basically I did what I just described. I had woken up, turned on the light, and laid down and went back to bed. And I guess when I fell back asleep, I never even realized I went back to sleep. And in my dream, I'm just sitting in bed and the light's on and everything looks completely normal as it always does. And all of a sudden, my dad walked in and he's like, "Hey, son, how are you doing?" I said, "I'm doing good." And he said, "What are you doing today?" I said, "I'm going to the movies with a friend." And he said, "Well, what movie are you going to see?" And I told him the name of it, and I'm starting to tell him the plot and everything. And I stopped at about halfway and I said, "Wait a minute, you're dead." And he said, "I love you, son." I said, "I love you too, Dad." And I woke up, and as I'm opening my eyes, I'm realizing this was a dream, which I didn't even realize that at the moment it happened. And I felt this pressure at the foot of my bed, and I thought it was my cat, like sleeping at the foot of the bed or standing at the foot of my bed. And when I opened my eyes, there was no cat. So that was probably like the deepest, I mean, communicating with the dead, balls deep, lucid dreaming experience I've ever had. And he still shows up sometimes in my dreams. He's not always the central figure of my dreams, but sometimes he's almost there as, I wouldn't say a guardian, but he accompanies me on certain dreams, let's say.
I love this example. Another
Thank
really
you.
great one, that the weight on the foot is when you wake up. Before he passed, I cannot recall the details of his passing. So were you aware he was going to pass?
It was very strange. I don't think I've ever told anybody about this. So last year, like towards the very beginning of 2018, he had a heart attack, and then he had 4 stents put in his heart. Then he had another heart attack, and he had open heart surgery. Well, he'd already had throughout the years, like he'd been disabled since like 1980, and he had osteosarcoma bone cancer in like the early 2000s. And the man had went through a lot of shit in his lifetime. Like he really had quite the medical history. But despite all that, he seemed completely normal and functioning. And that I never, I always knew eventually, like, yeah, he's had a lot wrong with him. He will die one day. Like, I always had that kind of in the back of my mind. But, he was only about 63, 62, 63. So he wasn't that old. I wasn't looking forward to it at all. Like, I wasn't, expecting it so soon. But I remember the day he died, I took him to his doctor in Jacksonville, and he wasn't sick or anything. It was just like a monthly thing he did every month. I took him to his doctor, and it was just a normal day, and we had a long conversation. And I took him home, and I said, you know what, I'll see you later on. I'm going to go home and get some sleep. And I did. And when I woke up that afternoon, I said, I'm going to go back over there. And I opened the door, and he was gone. He had a heart attack. But yeah, that's eventually what did him in. So it was abrupt, and it was kind of a surprise, but at the same time, like, I knew in the back of my head it sort of kind of maybe at some point was going to happen anyway. But it wasn't like he was sick and on a hospital bed and I was waiting for him to die or something like that. It was still very out of the blue, let's say.
Were you having any dreams prior to his passing that, that stuck out with him?
No, not that I can recall.
And do you mind if we talk about this for a minute?
Sure. Yeah.
And so when you walk in and found him, I'm not sure how much death you've been around and if he was the closest person or not, but I sense it.
Yeah, that was definitely. I mean, I've had a lot of people die in the last 10 years or so, but that was probably the one that affected me the most, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, I've always sensed it when it's come up. I feel it. I even feel it talking to you now. Uh so when you walked in and saw him, and had you had experience with the aftermath with a shell before?
Um, I here's the thing, like, I had never walked in, like, on a dead body like that before,
Yeah.
but I had been to a lot of funerals, and just so many people that were really, really close to me, even before him, had already died, to the point that, like, I don't know. And I'm not even trying to be morbid. I try to be optimistic about it. I try to look at it as, in this point, I mean, yeah, it makes me sad, but at the same time, I realize that, it's not the end. And with my own personal faith in voodoo, I believe very much in venerating the ancestors and venerating the ones who have passed. So I
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
that, yeah,
Yeah, we share that, and we're immortal. That was totally not the end. I mean, I feel it's amazing. I know no one has I have some conviction in this, but uh, I just wanted to get. I know you must have been to funerals, but just to see the death in its raw state is a whole different thing, as you now know.
for sure. No, for sure. Yeah, it was definitely a very, very deep moment for me.
Could you and this is, if you're uncomfortable, let me know and we will move on. Was there any, so what are the first feelings? And I'm trying to tie this into, and the reason why I'm digging into this is this idea of where one's consciousness is during these kinds of experiences. So when you encounter him, you walk in and there's his shell. What's this, your body, the visceral experience that moved through your body and not your mind?
Um, I would say just cold and electric, like a constant feeling like 1,000 little ants are crawling all over my skin, but just also very, very cold.
Mhm. And did you get a sense of, so you're in the presence of death for real then?
Yes.
That's when you really get a sense for how that feels. And it's like a club, you have to know. You have to have been through it to know.
Yes.
And so you've got this sensate stuff going on and this cold sensation. Were you Did that lead into a heavy flood of emotion, or did it take you time to process?
Um, well, it took me about a day or two to really process it, because when he died, like, he'd always told me for years, he said, "Now when I die, I want you to do X, Y, and Z." And I realized, like, when I got there, at first, of course, that emotional impact hit me, and then I realized, okay, I know that, one, I've got to tell my mom; two, the police and the ambulance are going to show up. Before I can, turn to a big wad of tears, I have to do X, Y, and Z. So I did everything exactly the way he told me to, which I think made him very happy. And it
Oh
was
yeah.
exactly the way he described it too when he was still alive. He said, "Watch, son, watch. It'll be exactly like this. These fake ass funeral directors will come up and they'll pet you on the head and say, 'We're so sorry for your loss,' as they flash their big fake smiles." And,
Uh-huh.
they do all that shit just so they can really sell you an overpriced casket and an overpriced
Yes.
tombstone and a shitty little lot in a cemetery. So he didn't want any of that. My dad lived in a studio apartment that was one room. He didn't own a car, and he lived on disability for 30 years. He was very adamant about not giving money to these crooks. So we didn't have a funeral. We didn't have him buried. We had him cremated, and my mother and myself were really the only ones who sort of, privately mourned and celebrated his loss, or mourned his loss, celebrated him as a human being, let's say.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we buried him on top of his mother's grave, which was also where he had buried his brother, who was also cremated. So you've got three generations of people
Oh
basically in
wow.
one grave. That's a whole different story. But of course, around the time he died, Betgede, which is November 2nd, which is right around the corner, I still had his ashes in my possession when that holiday came around, and I said my proper goodbyes and showed my respects then, while I still had the opportunity. So that was a very special thing.
Yeah, this is moving. I thank
Thank
you
you.
so much for sharing this content. It's helpful. It trust me, it's going to be helpful to people out there.
I hope
And
so.
yeah, and these different practices are important, and different ways of approaching how we all move through this. And this is just it's very significant. I I love I've gotta tell you, I love that that burial site has the 3 of them there, and I know you must from a Voodoo perspective and working with the dirt.
Oh, yes. Yeah, because even digging the hole, I realized, like, I'm not even digging in dirt anymore. Like, this is actually where, my uncle is, like, that is
Yes.
him now, and that's my dad too. So if I
Yes.
was ever to collect, like, a jar of graveyard dirt from that site, that's like three different ancestors in one.
Yeah, it's very powerful for you in the lineage. Very, very powerful. And of course you buy it, even though they're your direct relatives, as
Yes.
you know. Uh, uh, so so in and around this period, was he showing up or relatives connected to him in your dream life?
Um, you know what? I can't really. I don't want to say that they were. Um, I I do think maybe I did have one dream about my uncle Rick, who was his brother who had passed away around that time. But it, y- you know what? No, not really. Nothing that really, really stands out to that degree, like I described earlier.
And so what was the next dream? What was the very first dream? Is that the one you already gave us where your dad popped in, or were there precursors to that?
You know what? There was one brief precursor to that, but I don't know if I want to talk about that one on air. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to
Oh
be a
no, no
letdown.
apologies.
I guess I can talk about it. It's okay. I
No,
do
no,
remember,
it's
like right after he died, like right after he died, I had a dream kind of like that. I forget the setting, but I remember I was talking to him, and then I realized, like, oh my god, he's dead. And I said, "Is that really you?" And he was like he didn't even know a response to give me. And I was like, "Was that you, or is that really you? Because I thought you were dead." And he's didn't really have anything to say. Like I could tell just because I told him that, he was taken aback. And I woke up and I was just an emotional mess.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
it took me a long time with my I love no one more than my Momo. She was and still is the person I love the most. And so it, the relationship just changes and it goes in and out. But it took me actually years to be able to converse with her. It's funny because I had to keep pushing her away. Like it was one-on-one was too much, and then I'd push her to another room, or there'd be glass between us. There was always something because I got so emotional. And yeah, that's significant. And it's interesting what I'm hearing a lot now, Sam, which I hadn't heard prior to doing Nox Mente, and this is what's coming forward for me. I had read it in some of the studies and books, but personally, the life of talking to people about dreams since I was about 10, it's coming full force. Encountering people that are encountering their dead in dreams that didn't realize they're dead, being told they're dead.
Right.
And I just find this so significant, and it makes sense to me because if you think, well, I'm not my shell,
Right.
and so just because I'm not in it, I'm not dead. So it makes complete intellectual sense, but in the physical, in the body, in the heart, in the gut,
Totally.
there's a different experience, right?
It's like that oh god, it's like that scene in The Exorcist 3 where if you've ever seen the movie, the main protagonist is a detective who's looking for a murderer, and his best friend is a priest. And the murderer cuts people's throats or cuts people's heads off, I want to say. And in this dream, the detective goes to this place that kind of looks like maybe an airport or a bus station, and it's actually purgatory, and you see all these angels and just sort of people walking around. I think even Fabio plays an angel. He looks very stoic. It's really cool. It's pretty scary looking actually for an angel, but he goes up to his priest friend, and he's having a conversation with him, and he goes, "Yeah, this is such a weird dream." And the priest looks at him and says, "Only one of us is dreaming right now." And he woke up, and later that day he found out the priest had been murdered. So
It gives you the chills,
it
doesn't it?
does.
Gives
Oh,
me
for
the
sure.
chills. So in light of this, and on this the sacredness of this thin veil, and all our beloved having, just collectively, we accept that this is a thin veil, so it is because collectively we are saying it is. Uh what other dreams with the dead have you had that you can recall? And we can never forget our beloved uh fur friends and animal
Oh,
lower than human animal. Not necessarily lower than human, but non-human animals.
ooh, that's true. I think the ones I shared there were probably the most, the meat and potatoes of it. Really, the only other one I can think of that I don't know if this person was dead or not. I assume they were probably dead. But it also related to Baron Samedi. So I think in that aspect, it does kind of relate to like the dead in dreams. So I had this dream, and this was earlier this year too. I had this dream I was in middle school, and the middle school is actually within walking distance of my house. And by the basketball court, and this building doesn't exist in real life, by the way, but by the basketball court, there was this old wooden house. It looked like it was abandoned. And me and two other friends that I had went to school with, one of them was a very close friend, and the other one was kind of this douchebag I didn't really like. And I don't know why he was hanging out with me, but we went together. Neither of them practiced magic though, which is kind of surprising in retrospect as why they may have been there. But we went together to this house to see what is in this house. And I go inside, and it's filled with various voodoo ritual paraphernalia. There was an altar to Baron Samedi in there with a skull on it. and empty bottles and candles. And one of the two people that went with me, we'll call them A and N for short, because I won't really mention them anyway. N had a Coca-Cola, and he took the Coca-Cola and he unscrewed it and he pours it into a bottle on this altar. And I said, if you do that, just make sure not to put the cork on. And then I look on the ground and I see a bottle of white rum. So I pick up the white rum and I pour some of the white rum into the bottle. And there was a circular fire pit too, made out of bricks. And on the fire pit, there was a Jamaican flag with Ogun's Veve on it. And then this little black boy, about 12 or 13 years old, came in. And he's like, hi, how are you? I live here and I practice Obeah. And I said, what's your name? And he told me, but even in the dream and after I woke up, like, it almost felt like that part was purposely blurred from my memory. And I don't know why. But I'm talking with him, and I said, how old are you? He goes, oh, I'm 12, I'm almost 13. And I said, you live here? And he said, yeah. And I said, and you serve the Orisha and the Loa? And he said, yeah, yes, I do. I said, well, you're very young, and this is very admirable. Just be careful and keep up the good work. He says, okay. And we go to leave, right? And I'm walking out of the doorway, and I turn around, and I look back at the little boy, and he has this expression of horror on his face. And I say, what's the matter? And he points at the top corner of the room, and I look in at the top corner of the room, and this black smoke, like I imagine it was some kind of entity, is emerging from the corner of that room in the form of like this black smoke, and it's just billowing out. And my other two friends, N and A, they run, and I go to run, and it's this classic scenario. I'm sure you've heard about this in other people's dreams too. I go to run, and it feels like I'm walking underwater or in slow motion. Everything else is happening in regular speed, and I feel like I'm walking through a swimming pool of jello. I can't get away fast enough, and then I wake up. But I've always wondered who the little Obeah boy was. I wonder why he was in my dream. I wonder if he was. Wonder if he came with one of the other Loa, like Baron Samedi, or I wonder if maybe he's even linked to an ancestor of mine, perhaps. There's really no telling. I've always wanted him to come back. I've never seen him again.
I love this, and it is curious, isn't it? You know that young ones in dreams that aren't connected to you too. It's like pulling a page in the tarot, right?
Right.
And sometimes I think of them like that. It's bearers of information, or an idea, right? An idea or a concept. And so there's so many angles. But this leads me into asking this question that I'd come into this wanting to make sure we cover some of this with the different so you know skilled and knowledgeable with so many different traditions and
Thank
so
you.
much occult knowledge and all the stuff that you've done and participated in. Where do you see the most overlap with the dreams and the workings? So, I mean, clearly with the Voodoo, you've already given us a few examples, and I expected to hear that, but maybe with some of the TOS stuff and
Ooh. You know what? I don't know if any one in particular really outweighs the other at this point. I see it a decent bit with like goetic entities too sometimes. Remember earlier when you mentioned sort of that half awake, half dreaming state, like when you're sort of either about to wake up or you can't really hit that deeper level of REM sleep?
yes.
I'll have a lot of like, they are dreams, but they're so short and I can't really remember them. I'll have like a lot of little dreams in that state where I'm holding some type of Goetia sigil, and I'm always either naked or I'm wearing a black robe, and I'm at this altar. I'm usually holding it in the air with one hand, chanting some kind of name or calling on some infernal name. And sometimes I'll be able to remember just the name or just the sigil. like Astaroth or Belial or whoever, but I never really am able to take that much of those, for whatever reason, of those specific dreams back with me. I wish I could remember more about them. Sometimes I remember doing these workings on the astral plane and I don't even remember what it was I was doing or calling on. That can be a little bothersome.
Yeah, those often, just tying into the tarot again, all that stuff that kind of gets veiled reminds me of the high priestess. So we know we did a working, but there's a veil between you and the working. And, of course, it's the knowing with the finger on the mouth and the book of power right there and the columns and all, everything that it represents. And so I tend personally, I allow that to be because it's going to unfold.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
The veil gets lifted.
And what a perfect time to discuss this too, considering it's Halloween. It's the veil's almost gone. It's non-existent at this point. You're gonna summon or do a spell. This is the time to do it.
Well, the thing that people I find that this seems to be a more for the add water and stir type of cultists, that is everyone realizes or forgets that these are seasons. So we're in the Samhain season for 30 days, really. I mean, we're in it for a turn of the magical wheel.
Right. No, it's yeah, we're at that death stage, that yin stage right before we circle right back around into spring next year.
Right. And so it's never just one day. It's like a full moon. There's the 3 days around a full moon or the lunation, and those 3 days are important. But then we have, the year, the wheel of the year. The wheel of the month is just that little microcosm of it. And then, of course, we can just fractal that the hell out to where the netherlands of thinking. So I want to get your ideas, Sam, on some of this stuff. So since we're on the topic of our sacred dead and of the sacred dead and of the veil, what are your thoughts at this point where you stand right now? Because hopefully they will change a lot. Hopefully by tomorrow something changes. It's it's the beautiful aspect that we get new sensory input and we allow ourselves to grow. What do you think death is from where you stand right now?
Oh wow. That's a really deep question. And before I answer it, I just want to say I can only give an approximation of my understanding. I don't claim to know any absolute truth, but I do have, based on my own personal belief and things that I have experienced, just sort of my own understanding of it. I don't believe in heaven or hell, but I do believe in life after death. And I've seen some evidence for reincarnation, although if given an option, I would definitely not want to reincarnate. That's just me. I think so. Instead of heaven or hell, there's a place called Egun, not to be confused with the Loa of Iron and Strength, Ogun, of course. There's a place called Egun, which is basically just the land of the dead, land of the ancestors. And to me, that whole concept makes more sense than heaven or hell. I think, and there is even kind of an idea that spirits can be elevated from Egun to either go back to the source or possibly even reincarnate. But I give no definite answers. I just know that within my own understanding, that seems to resonate the most with me.
What separates you from the state of death now? I mean, what's the difference?
I think the only difference is a physical body.
And what makes you convinced that this is real, in the sense that you would separate yourself from death?
I think that begs a deeper question of the fabric of reality being real, and how we as individuals perceive that thing. I think that's kind of a Gnostic idea. I think that the traditional Christian Gnostics obviously saw this as a illusion that they would try to escape. As more of a left-hand path sympathizer, I see this as a illusion that I'm stuck in whether I like it or not, so I'm going to manipulate it to my advantage as much as I can.
Ave to that.
Ave.
Ashe, baby. And
Ashe. Well, I thought you
Ashe-
meant Ave Satanis.
well, I'm
Ashe
just-
works too.
we could do right. Ashe Alafia. So all right, with this idea and these concepts running around, and everyone knows, I'm just looking for opinions, and I honestly don't believe anyone has the answer unless they're, there might be people who have the answer. They're moving in and out and are fully awake within the dream, and I know they are out there. I know they exist. However, in general, it's a general rule of thumb. We all have a say here because there is no bar. And that's what I like about this.
That's
So
that's
you
the
can
beautiful
come at
part
me with
about
a
it.
PhD and whatever the hell you think you got, and it's still a leveler.
That's the beautiful part about your show, though. I think I like you just said, I don't claim to know any absolute truth on that subject, but maybe through all of us, maybe within a small piece of each of our truths, maybe we can get closer to the actual answer.
Maybe this is a mosaic.
Exactly, yeah.
It's only me who wants to. Okay, so this idea of, so if we're looking at death, what about dream? What's separating you from the state of dreaming?
Ooh, as far as
You're allegedly awake right now. So what tells you that you're awake and not dreaming? What makes you feel that there's a separation between those two states?
for me, I guess the paradigm that's made the most sense is sort of the one that people like Kenneth Grant or Carlos Castaneda would talk about. They would say the right hand consciousness, the waking, and I don't even necessarily mean this as in like right hand path, left hand path magic. I just want to get that out first. But you could say the right hand path consciousness, the waking uh, consciousness, and then the left hand path consciousness, the abstracted, not bound by physical limitations, uh, an interplay of personal interpretation through how you perceive these things. I think that would be the difference. I think that both are equally valid, and I think that to totally live in the left-hand reality would invite nothing but insanity and chaos. But if we can go to that left-hand reality, if we can learn these lessons and then come back to where we are right now, then perhaps that can benefit us as humans, either in our day-to-day mundane lives or maybe on a deeper introspective level.
So how do you parse out the idea of, say, memories from dreams from now? So this idea, we're obviously going to weave in the idea of time space, right?
Ooh, I like where you're going with this. I hope I can pick a good enough answer.
No answer is wrong. It's silly.
I think, wow, that's a good one. I think that, well, maybe memories. That's the funny thing about memories, right? We can remember something, and even though, yeah, that memory might have some basis in quote unquote reality, whatever that is, or an event that quote unquote actually happened, uh, how we perceive that and how it's affected us in our life could change how we remember that. And I think that even kind of goes into like false memories or just how people really interpret things, honestly. I don't think it even really means that somebody is lying. but sometimes the way those things, or the way we interpret those things where we are at that period in life, can play a big role in how we remember them later on. And that does make me wonder what the difference is with dreams. I think dreams are totally not bound by some of the limitations of our waking reality, but memories are probably closer to waking reality, but they're not completely bound by those limitations either. Maybe memories are the middle ground between dreams and waking reality. I hope that wasn't too much word
And
salad.
so what and so someone like you, no, this is excellent. All excellent. So someone like you, especially, who messes with the idea of artifice and identity, and brings all this beautiful stuff that we all know and love you for, and that attracted me to you. You know, what's
Aw.
the difference in so this is kind of it's an identity thing in the visage. So you can throw on a lace front wig and be Poppy for us. You can be hardcore Sam for us. You can be lollipop little girl Sam. I mean, there's like, a lot of different identities that are floating around. And I'm wondering, in in line with what we've just been talking about, the states of death, the states of memory, the states of dreaming. And now, when we mess around with identity and artifice, is there, where is Sam? What is Sam? And so it's not just like I'm giving it to you because you're Sam. We're talking to Sam, but I mean this for anyone. Where's the core consciousness?
That's a great question to ask. I think for me, wow. Well, I'll preface it with saying this: a big question deserves a big answer. Uh, I think that each of those, whether it's a look or it's a persona that I try to give off, I think that I'm trying to express a different aspect of me, whether it's how I feel or how I perceive myself, or whenever I portray myself a certain way, how that has an effect with how society sees me. Uh, you could even say that's sort of a lesser form of black magic. I give this appearance, and based on that appearance, people buy into that as a quote unquote reality, which I'm not saying I'm fake, but maybe on the surface level, these different personas or masks, maybe even a Taoist sense that I wear, are they're illusionary in a way. I think that they're illusionary because, yeah, that is part of who I am, but it's not all that I am. It's just a piece of who I am. Even me stripped down right now with no makeup, no wigs, no costumes, even this is still just a fraction of my totality. Um, I could explore those areas to gratify something, whether it's how I feel sexually or emotionally, or a combination of the two, or artistically. Um, it could be anything really. Even my imagination, maybe I want to dress up like Bruno Bucciarati from Golden Wind. But yeah, it's I don't know. Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan's real name is Robert Zimmerman, and there's a quote from him where he's about to go on stage and he says, "I have to put my Bob Dylan mask on," and that said to me that Bob Dylan is obviously a character, if you will, that this Robert Zimmerman has created, this persona, uh, of sort of the Woody Guthrie esque, grew up in the country, rode the railroads type of folk singer guy, because nobody really gave a shit about the little Jewish boy named Robert Zimmerman who grew up in the Midwest. So the same could be said for David Bowie. Ziggy Stardust, Aladdin Sane, Diamond Dogs, Halloween Jack. These are things that he created, characters, if you will, that he personified. And, even as a warning from Bowie, he would tell you, there was a point in time where he spent so much time as Ziggy Stardust, he thought he was Ziggy Stardust. And, that's why he basically had to kill that character and really start anew, as any artist really does, so he didn't fall into that trap. I think whenever maybe I dress up, especially if it's somebody else that already exists, like Poppy, like if I dress like Poppy, if I portray Poppy, then I can't let that appearance dictate who I am, because then I'm not even really living for me. I'm really living for, an appearance of either mimicry or trying to appease to something that's only a fraction of what I am.
And that goes right to where I wanted to get with this query here, which is mimicry. We start moving into that. And by the way, you just always right ahead of my head. I'm thinking Ziggy Stardust and the Elfin Duke and all the great Bowie characters. And Stevie Nicks always says it too. I'm putting Stevie Nicks on now.
Ooh.
And I think most performers understand that. Certainly people in the theater understand that. However, with mimicry, I want to move into this idea of, and this will be great with you, of possession.
Ooh.
So with all of this that we've built, this little house we're dwelling in now that we've built here tonight, in the idea of mimicry is through this veil, where is that line? There's a line there when you're doing Poppy, you could succumb to it. And in a ritual sense, in a voodoo sense, we do this.
Oh, absolutely. I think that voodoo possessions are very, very real. I went to a wow. I understand exactly what you're saying. But I think there with voodoo and the Loa or the Orisha, it even goes a step beyond that. But it does play a role. Let me explain. I went to a ceremony last summer where it was a group dance, had ritual drummers. There's about 100, 200 people there. Of course, with different Loa, there's different drum rhythms and there's different dances. Usually they're all, I call it, this isn't the real name for it, but I've nicknamed it the step. You take a step forward, a step back, take a step forward, a step back. And of course, with different Loa, there's usually different attributes that come with them. My holy guardian Orisha is Obatala, who's an old man. And I remember when we did the song to Obatala and I took on the form of Obatala, I mimicked, I felt like I became an old man. My hands felt like they had atrophy or, a lot of joint, I can't think of the name for it, a lot of, oh God, what's it called when you pop your knuckles and shit?
But the
Cracking your
arthritis.
knuckles?
Arthritis, yeah. I felt like I had a lot of arthritis in my hands, like they were slightly bent inward. My back was slightly arched. And, the more I got into that state of being, the more I was able to channel into a Batala. And the same with the other Orisha as well. Like when they did Ilegua, everybody just sort of went crazy. Little kids were running around. Like people weren't really following steps anymore. People were laughing and running around and shit. It was awesome. But so that is one aspect of it, putting on this persona or to help come in contact with this deity. I've even done it alone with a Baron Samedi. There's a dance called La Banda, which is Baron Samedi carries a cane and he uses his cane like a penis. And La Banda is basically an improvisational dance where he uses his cane like a giant penis. And so that's one half of it. But whenever you get in that ritual setting, there were people dancing, participating in the ritual, but what I noticed, there were people talking, having a drink and like some caviar on a cracker or whatever, ha ha ha. And like they could be completely normal talking to somebody like I'm talking to you now. And then within a split second, their arms would contort like this and they would just start screaming like, ah, ah. I saw one man who I'm sure was no stranger to being possessed, get possessed by Yemaya. And that was probably the most intense possession I have ever seen. He bent his arms, it looked uncomfortably painful. He bent his arms behind his back like a chicken and starts flapping his arms and spinning in a circle. And he falls and he hits the ground. And they took him inside. And I probably shouldn't say too much about this, but I guess it's okay since I'm not mentioning names or people. They put a dress on him and basically dressed him up to look like Yemaya. And when he came out, the man he was before, whoever he was gone. He spoke in this loud, shrill, feminine laughter, like it sounded a little maniacal, but definitely not evil. And he was neither speaking in Spanish nor in English. I don't know what language this guy was speaking in. Maybe it was Yoruba. I won't swear to it. Maybe it was like talking in tongues. I don't know. But it's a very intense thing to witness. But yeah, I mean, even going back to the example you made, I mean, if I dress like Poppy, if I put on this wig, if I do my makeup to look this certain way, or put on clothes to look this certain way, I can channel the archetype of what that is, because we all know Poppy's just a character created by Mariah and Titanic Sinclair anyway, so I'm embracing that archetype. I can embody that and put that on display.
Oh yeah, it's cultural voodoo, and it's amazing. That's why I love Poppy so much. You know this.
Oh, I know.
I mean, there's so many ways we could talk just about Poppy and how
I just want to say it's so cool to you're the only person that and I didn't even know this at the time. I just remember going on to Poppy Church one day, and out of the blue there was Niche, and I said, and you were mentioning all these people like Saroth and CW Chanter, and I said, hold up, how do you know all these people? Because I have never met another Poppy seed that knew anything about our little community, or even really about too many of them that knew about the occult or anything like that. So I thought that was really cool that we were able to
we have
connect
so
on that
many
later.
ties. Birdio, TOS. I mean, there's so many things that tie us together. So I want to continue on with where I'm going here.
Okay.
And so with this idea of possession, and it's absolutely static, electric when it's going on. People that don't experience it don't understand. It's static, electric. It is otherworldly when you're really in the presence of it, done in a voodoo or voodoo sense, or even Santeria. In this spiritualized, I don't even want to use this word, but in this positive light, it's like a very desired state. It's unbelievable to witness. So I have a 2-pointer here. In your dreams and in waking life. So we're crossing the lines again, right? This is where I think this is the place to live, is on those crossed lines, the crossed keys. And do you ever experience the omniscient view? So you're not behind the eyes, you're viewing your experience from somewhere else, third person or in the corner.
Oh, wow. Yeah, actually that has happened. You know, mainly, I mean, there have been things, I guess you could say, with quote unquote my mind's eye, using active imagination, that I quickly realized, oh, wait, this isn't just my imagination. But there was one really intense experience where I did see something with the naked eye, and it wasn't my mind's eye. It was like something I really saw, like I'm looking at this computer screen right now. Um, it was after working with Ball in the Goetia about 2 years ago. I told this story over on Saroth's channel over a year ago or so, but it's really one of the very few true paranormal experiences I've had in the occult, which there haven't been many, which I do it more for spiritual than paranormal reasons anyway, but that's beside the point. Anyway, I had just gotten done working with ball for a week. And after this had happened, I kept seeing like a little black thing in the corner of my eye. Like I thought it might have been a shadow or even my cat because I own two black cats. And I would see this thing in the corner of my eye, and as soon as I'd turn my head to look at it, it would kind of disappear. And I would think, oh, that's nothing. My eyes are playing tricks on me. It's a shadow or a cat or whatever. And one night, I was on Skype talking to a friend, and I see this little black thing about the size of a baseball that just looked like black smoke. And if people think I'm making this up, that's 100% fine. I understand, because even I think I sound crazy telling this story, but it's true. It's true for me. I saw this thing appear in front of me, like a little black ball of smoke about the size of a baseball, clear as day. It's not something I saw and it disappeared or it ran away. It's like right there floating through the air in my room. And then I see another one, and I see another one, and then I see another one, and I see another one. And before I know it, it felt like there were about 100 of these things in my room circling me while I'm sitting at the computer like fish in a bowl. And I'm kind of freaked out because I'd heard these people like E.A. Coetting with their video program say, oh, summon spirits to physical appearance, summon spirits. And I just thought it was a bunch of bullshit. I thought it was to sell their books or it was a gimmick or whatever. But this was very, very, very real. And I was thinking, I was like, well, they're not here to hurt me, so maybe I shouldn't banish them. But that went on for a few minutes, like maybe 3 minutes, and it all just disappeared. And to my own understanding, what I think that is in the Goetia, you'll read about different spirits and it'll say, this is King so-and-so, ruler of whatever. He owns a legion of 735 spirits. Well, whenever you summon him, you also summon the legions that he governs over. So I think that those were probably lesser spirits that serve under Baal. But the weird thing about that is, it wasn't even in a ritual context. The ritual had been over by a couple of days, and it happened while I was having a Skype, call on my phone, or computer. So it just really kind of, I don't know, it didn't scare me, but it definitely startled me for the simple fact I just didn't think anything like that could be real.
Yeah. It's well, so this is when we have to really look at I guess I need to question your concept of time. What is time? How do you perceive time, Sam?
Ooh, this is another one of my favorite subjects. Wow. I think overall time is a man-made concept to use kind of like a measuring stick to recall things that have happened, establish where we are right now, and predict things to come. That's the boring answer, right? But that would be quote unquote real time. Stephen Hawking, and this is something in my own personal studies, I find really relates a lot to magic, especially magic that has to do with time travel or meditation, things like that. Stephen Hawking also speaks of something called imaginary time. And this is where real time is vertical, like I just explained, past, present, future, whatever. Imaginary time is linear. It can go in any direction. So through imaginary time, through this concept of imaginary time as a tool in certain rituals, we can quote unquote time travel to any destination we really want to go. And there's even rituals like this in the Voodoo Gnostic workbook, where they use an 8-pointed circle with a different loa governing over a different point in space-time in the circle. So considering that real time is even a man-made concept, Hawking says that imaginary time is equally as valid as real time. So if he's going to say that, there's got to be some merit behind it.
Well, it breaks down to these ideas that what we feed grows, right? And so there's, I mean, there's all that magical context around so much, and time really has it summed up, because there are so many everyone's participating in the idea of time as a construct. And so, and in a way that it kind of holds down the magical, there's a glass plate there that holds down the magic, and it's part of the challenge of the magician, right? We're gonna move through
for
this.
sure.
I'm gonna break on through.
To the other side.
Which you can do by simply dreaming.
Yes, actually, that's a very true statement.
So I want to open it up and make sure that people have time to ask you questions.
Okay.
I got questions.
I see Jerry is doing something. I think he might have questions.
Yeah, no wonder you guys weren't hearing me. I was muted. All right.
I wondered why you were so quiet.
I know, I did too. Usually he'll at least pop in.
I had like 10 times I said something, you guys didn't answer me. Like, okay.
Oh, Jerry.
Oh, no.
I wondered.
It's cool.
Muted.
It's no worries.
There's so much of this conversation that Jerry gets knee deep in, at least knee deep. And so
What you were just talking about, though, and the I forget the timeline and whatnot. And then you said something about, I don't remember what you said, Nish, but it reminded me about what Sam said about David Bowie destroying the Ziggy Stardust character. And I think that's also an alchemical process that allows him to create something better.
Yes.
In a way.
No, you're dead on. You're 100% accurate. Another thing that is both shared by Castaneda and Kenneth Grant. I think Grant even cites Castaneda in one of his books about this. Is there's an idea of magical mannequins, or making a sacrifice to the eagle, as Castaneda calls it. And this whole idea of the mannequin that you sacrifice, it is basically the limitation of how you perceive yourself. That's the sacrifice you make to the eagle. And when you sacrifice this mannequin, you have liberated yourself into a wider range of possibilities. So say you have it in your mind, okay, I like this TV show, I only listen to this kind of music, I eat this kind of food, and I live in this kind of city. I embrace this kind of culture, and that's who I am. I'm nothing else but that, and I'm sticking to it. If you sacrifice that idea, you broaden your horizons to the ability to where if you go to a totally different city, totally different location, or just put yourself in situations that you usually wouldn't be in, you broaden
your awareness. Yeah.
Totally. Even the sorcerers from northern Mexico used to do that. Like Don Juan and his people, they would go to Southern California and go to places that were very not expected for a sorcerer to go. They'd wear nice suits and maybe eat at a French restaurant or something, or go to a play, but and almost behave as totally different people than they would have in Sonora, Mexico.
Nice.
Very gentleman of Jupiter.
The other thing I wanted to bring up was the Typhonian magic and Kenneth Grant and the whole, what's the book? Something Eve? I can't remember his book with that describes all the demons of the Tree of Life on the back.
Night Side of Eden.
Night Side of Eden, thank you. So there's this dude named Tim Refat. You ever heard of him?
Unfortunately, yes.
So he talks about Kenneth Grant in that book and says that his position is that the Tree of Life that Grant presents is backwards. It's like
Kenneth Grant, it is. It's basically an upside down version of the Tree of Life. Say
right, but
the paths are different.
But then he says it's horizontally flipped, so it's actually backwards. And because it's backwards, everyone's doing the wrong magic against it.
With all due respect, I can't take anything Tim Refat says seriously, because he also says that Taylor Swift is a Nagual and that he communicates directly to Katy Perry through dreams.
Yeah, he does say that.
He also says he said some very derogatory things about the comedian Kevin Hart. I'll be honest. All cards on the table. Tim Refat's YouTube channel is sort of like the best unintentional comedy for me I've ever seen. I was watching him talk about the clip-off one day, and he's saying, I know, even for like a British accent, the way he enunciates his words is so strange to me.
He talks weird, yeah.
He's talking about the clip-off, and he's saying, okay, well, each one of these 22 paths is related to a different demon, and there's a different sexual magical ritual with each one, so if you want to access the clip-off, you can get a lady with a strap-on to simply fuck you up the ass. And he's actually kind of right about that. But the way he presents
that's right.
The way he presents...
Yeah. I don't think his magic descriptions and whatnot are incorrect. He's very abrasive personality, though.
The things he studies are really fascinating. They're actually the same things I study, but it's the way he presents it that turns me off. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he's hardcore. I mean, he's got to alienate everyone. Whom does he not alienate?
Well, that feeds him power.
The insults are everywhere. So, but if you look at the content, it's very interesting.
Yeah, but he's a black magician, and hate towards him is energy for his work.
As he openly states. Right, as he openly states, and clearly that he is feeding off of that at least. If nothing else, it's in a vacuum, but it perhaps is bigger than that.
Anyway, I just thought I'd bring that up because it's interesting.
Oh, it is. If you I'll make a quick suggestion. You might even want to pick up this book, or maybe anybody at home. There's a really great book by a lady named, I believe her name is Michelin Linden, and it's called Typhonian Teratomas, and it's basically a path working of all the demons from the clip-off, the tunnels of Set, and yeah, it's very practical, very straight to the point. Good little book.
And Jerry, you'll get that in the chat for everyone and in our
what was her last name?
Links.
Linden. Linden, I think.
Den is, yeah.
I'll find it. It'll be in the show notes. Probably not chat.
I think in an occult library, it's a must-have.
Oh, it's a great book. You read it too, Niche?
You know how I don't know if you know Dawn Von Nagy, but she lived here for a while, so I had full access to her library, which is remarkable. And I picked up a lot of the Typhonian stuff directly. She brought a lot of that into my world.
Cool. That's awesome.
Yeah, and also she calls Bertio the wizard in the tower. She visits him and stuff. They're quite close.
You told me about her. Now, I've never met her, but that's fascinating. Yeah.
I think you probably encountered her. She's got different like Anonin, and I mean, I think you must have encountered her. Everyone, you know how the names go in different places.
Yeah, Michael Bertio is one of my favorites. I even wrote down some. We don't have to get to them if you want to move on. But I even wrote down some dreams that related to things that happened to me with the Voodoo Gnostic workbook. If you were interested in any of that.
Oh God, I am.
Oh man. If you want, I can go off on my last little chunk of Voodoo dreams before we move on.
Let's see what Jerry had a little pile of questions, and then let's
I'm done.
No, go on, because I felt so bad. I didn't realize you didn't know you were muted the whole time.
I only wrote down 2, so I'm good.
Okay, cool.
I love your shirt, by the way. I just want to
thank you.
Jerry's the king of good shirts.
So,
it's my favorite kind of music too.
He could wear a new T-shirt every day for like the next 20 years.
No, I probably have 100 shirts.
I don't know about that, Jerry. Anyway, okay.
Maybe 4 months.
Dude.
At least you don't have to do laundry all the time.
I do.
Just kidding.
So
I save all my shirts till I'm out.
That's how I do laundry too, Jerry. I get down to the last thing that I want to wear.
Then you're wearing the ratty underwear, and it's like,
yeah, right. That's
why
the
am I
last
such
straw.
a lazy piece of shit?
I know.
You say it like it's a bad thing, Niche. No, I'm just kidding.
We all have our. I'm like in that mode where it's like, oh God, I could do laundry. I could do something fabulous.
Exactly.
Okay, give us some voodoo gnosis stuff.
Oh wow. So I'll make it quick. This was sort of a two-part dream I had a couple years back when I had first gotten the Voodoo Gnostic workbook. Um, First section of the Voodoo Gnostic workbook is called Lucky Hoodoo, and it's written under a pseudonym called Bekaloo Baka, which is a magical name that Michael Bertio uses. But the spirit Bekaloo Baka is also featured a good bit in that section of the book. And Bekaloo Baka is very interesting. He's a very dark, aggressive Petro kind of Loa that he's often seen maybe a little similar to Pazuzu in the sense that he's a protector. He could be seen as a guardian of the Voodoo faith, but by paradox, or at least the way that Bertio presents him in the book, he's similar to Satan in a way too, because he's kind of good luck, and that's sort of the paradox. That this thing that's presented through such horrific imagery is actually could be used for good luck or benefit. And I had two really fascinating dreams about Bekaloo Baka around the time I had gotten that book. The first one, I was in a field, like a country field with a little wooden house. Funny how we always go back to this setting, except this time it's daytime. And I look down in my hand and I have the veve of Bekaloo Baka on a piece of paper. And I look up and the field where the house is surrounded by a forest. And the sun is setting. And I'm holding this veve looking at it. And I'm walking into the forest as the sun is setting and going down. Now, that was all there was to that dream. But the very next night, I had a different dream where I'm in the woods and it's dark and it's nighttime and there's like a little fire and there's a guy that kind of looks like the way they describe Queequeg and Moby Dick. You know, he has a scalp lock and he's covered in tattoos and, you know, he's very native looking. And he's got a needle and like a little hammer and he's giving me a tattoo on my leg. And it's this giant sleeve that circles around my leg. I'm looking at him tattoo this on my leg, and I realize it's a scene, almost kind of like a panorama. And it's this monster coming out of the forest and eating children. And I thought,
Yeah.
whoa, it kind of freaked me out a little bit. And I woke up from that, and I definitely knew that was, you know, to complement the previous night's dream.
Oh yeah. It's funny. It makes me think of that Goya painting to the Kronos Saturn eating his children.
Oh, for sure. I love that painting, by the way. What a great.
Yeah, amazing. I love that succession of dreams right there. The 1 and 2 punch.
Sometimes I'll have a sequel to a dream. It's never, you know, I can never tell when that's going to happen, but sometimes it will on rare occasion.
Do you? And so I know we're at the 2-hour mark, but so I just want to ask a couple more questions. Do you? And this brought it in, this whole sequel to that dream, which is a whole different pathway, but it's something I like to get out. So I'm glad you just addressed that. What about dreaming true and premonition type dreams or prophetic dreams?
Oh, wow. You know, I've had a couple. I might can tell you one story off air, but yeah, there has been several little things. Most of it is usually minor things, like things that don't really bear a lot of significance, but they do happen. Like, okay, maybe I'm glad you brought this back up because this was a dream I had when I was a kid that I completely forgot about. Um, when I was a kid, they were building a lot of new houses around my neighborhood, and I remember there was a dream where they built a house with a wooden colored fence, and in an area where there were no houses and it was just woods. And I woke up thinking like, oh, that's not real. I don't know why I dreamed that, whatever. And about a week goes by and they built that house with the exact same fence. And, not that that really had any deep meaning later on down the line, but it actually happened. And that was the part that kind of startled me. And little things like that have happened to me throughout my life. There was only one really big one that was pretty scary, but yeah, we'll talk about that another time, maybe.
See, this is what's so significant, say, about the premonitions or the dreaming true, and even deja vu, is that yes, they are oftentimes mundane things, but that's not what matters. What matters is that we've made a connection, right? Like it's like a pathway has been opened up that says, oh, this is possible. It's an unconscious pathway. It's way buried into the potential within your inner world of what can happen, which is a crack in the wall. And all you need is a crack in the wall for the air to escape, for the
Oh,
spirit to get out.
that's a great metaphor. That's a great metaphor, by the way.
Yeah, right. And so I just think that that is important, and everyone that tells these stories always start with, well, it's just a mundane detail, and it's like, if we're looking at the world in a whole different way, there is no mundane, absolutely none.
That's true, because even the little things sometimes have deeper meanings. I mean, I probably sound crazy, and this is probably, something that people would look at and see as the argument against magic. But there have been periods of my life where, you know, numbers on the backs of license plates or numbers on envelopes in the mail or the song on the radio at a certain time on a certain date at a point in my life would like strike a deep meaning. I almost felt like it was trying to tell me something. So I always, for me personally, I don't believe in coincidence, but I believe 100% in synchronicity.
Right, and the only difference there is it's meaningful coincidence. So we've
Exactly.
ascribed meaning to it, which means it's like naming that which cannot be. Once you have the name, you have the power.
Yes, that's
And
a
you
big
you
part
know
of it
this magically.
for sure.
And it's one of those things too with dealing with entities or demons or spirits, whatever you want to call them, wherever the others are, is getting the true name, because there's a lot of trickery that can be involved in that. But once you can name it, once you have the sigil, the true name.
That's true. That's I did I think it was last month I did an interview on Kelly Farmer's channel, and she mentioned the Ouija board and she mentioned the spirit Zozo. And
Hmm.
I said, the reason he's probably able to possess so many people and mess so many people up is because this is a spirit that nobody had ever really heard of before until maybe 2 or 3 years ago on the internet.
Hmm.
And he's kind of become like the modern day Bloody Mary or Candyman type of figure because now it's started this chain reaction of kids on the internet playing with Ouija boards to summon this Zozo demon. For me personally, I'm like, fuck that. I'd rather take my chances with Satan or King Paimon or whoever.
Do you
Right.
think so? Like, for what you were saying, the Zozo thing. Do you think? I know that's an older type of demon. What do you think about? I guess what I'm getting at. Long roundabout way here. Like Slender Man and Flannel Man, Hat Man, those type of entities that people see. Do you think those are constructed entities like tulpas?
It could be very possible. That's wow, it's another deep question. So many deep questions. So many deep questions. Oh
It's
my
not every
gosh.
night we have a demonologist.
Right, absolutely.
It it's having a tulpa or an egregore is kind of like having an imaginary friend on steroids that after you do give him so much belief, I mean, he really is, he or could potentially become as powerful as something out of the Goetia, let's say. It makes me ask about H.P. Lovecraft and Cthulhu. I mean, on one hand, we could say, were these Gnostic revelations that Lovecraft received in dreams? They exist pre-Lovecraft and just used him as sort of a medium? Or were these things Lovecraft created within his consciousness and put out into the world and, further reinforced by people like Anton LaVey, Michael Aquino, Kenneth Grant, people like that? Is that what gave them their life? I think whether it's potato or potato, the objectivity is they're here and they're playing their role.
Yes. Well, and then that's the meat of Nox Mente too, is the fact that is that exact fact. I mean, I don't need to throw other words around it. They're here, they're getting fed.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think, even in modern day times with the memes and the plushies and stuff, Cthulhu lives just as strongly now as he did in the 1930s. So,
oh, if not even more so.
More so. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I think he's rising.
There was even talk about the Deepwater Horizon incident of being some kind of ritual to raise Cthulhu out of the Gulf.
Whoa, that's whoa.
Can we say juicy?
Juicy. Where were you? You know how people always have those bumper stickers, and especially in the South, I'm sure you've seen them, Jerry. Where are you going to be when Jesus comes back? Where are you going to be when Cthulhu comes back? Better hope you're not in the Caribbean somewhere, or he'll eat your ass. But
it's a good thing I don't go in the water. All right, well,
a ditto.
I say we call it.
So, Sam, I just have loved this. I love it. You delivered here at the end of this little session. You delivered in such a beautiful way for Samhain and the season. I really, really appreciate the personal content that you shared with us. I know that some of that was difficult, and I think that the right people that need to hear it will find it and get something good out of it. And this is, of course, only the beginning, but was a long time coming, baby, wasn't it?
It really was. I mean, I know you guys are really booked because you've had some very popular guests in the past, and sometimes it takes Jerry even a few months in advance to really fit somebody into your schedule. And I just want to say thank you to both of you. Thank you, Niche. Thank you, Jerry, for having me here.
You're welcome.
Not only for the 100th episode, but for the Halloween Eve episode. And it's something that I would have done on February the 8th, or any time if I could have. I wanted to come out here for about a year now, so I love this.
Well, maybe we'll have you back on the obelisk. We could talk more go deep on the clip off and the tunnels of set. I'd really love to talk about that.
My God, that'd be excellent. And I did want to say that I'm so proud that this is our 100th episode. That it just makes me glow. I love Nox Mente so much, and Jerry and I started it. We got married in a fever, it was in Jackson, and so here we are.
But was it hotter than a pepper sprout?
Well, it may have been. So here
maybe
we
someday
are.
We'll actually meet in person.
Yeah, really, we'll manifest that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a true pleasure, and I'm glad you're also marking this date with us, Sam.
Oh, thank you so much, Niche. I just want to say, Niche, you're absolutely beautiful. Thank you for always being so supportive and loving. Jerry, you are one of the great old ones, horrific and terrible and awesome in all your greatness alike. Thank you for haunting the CW Chanter chats for all this time that I've known you, and thank you for the invite. And maybe I can catch you next time. You're actually a lot closer to where I live than I thought you were, so maybe we'll have to definitely get together sooner rather than later.
Definitely. I'll bring my strap on.
This was behind the scenes.
Oh, right. I forgot.
It's okay if you forget it. I've got one you can
All
borrow.
right.
I love a
And
backup.
thanks everybody for listening, and be sure to tune in next week. We've got celebrity psychic Laura Powers going to be our
I'm
guest. It should be
excited.
pretty
Hey,
interesting.
I have permission to plug one thing.
Yeah, I was going to ask that
Oh,
before I
yes.
said final goodbye.
Oh,
I'm sorry. I'm
we
being
forgot.
Oh,
I just want to do it before I forget, because if I don't, then the separate crew will bop me on the head with a mallet or something. But I also want to say to anybody who watched this and enjoyed it, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And if you want, please go over after this is finished to the Lost Word podcast, the with 2 E's, to watch Davey, Saroth the Mage, Baz, and myself talk about some of the origins of Samhain and Halloween.
Yes. This is also why you're on it, and I will be trying to go over there. I'm really thrilled you guys are doing this, by the way.
Thank you.
You're all just fabulous. Where else can people find you, Sam, in the universe?
You can find me at Shadow Zone Productions on YouTube, which I'm actually going to open up a new Shadow Zone Productions YouTube solely for my music, and I'm going to take the one that I have right now and convert it solely into a magical channel. I'll probably change the name of it when I do that, but I don't know what I'll call it. Or if you want to follow me on Twitter, you can follow me at shadow_x_zone. And there you go.
Yep, just look for our tweet for this show from the Nox Mente Twitter, and it's got a link to yours in there. Yep. Great. Well, thanks again, Sam. It was awesome talking to you. Thank you, Nish. Great show. Thank you, listeners, and we'll talk to you next week.
Bye.
Bye, bye, bye.